Hi, this is Gary with MACMOST.com. Let me show you how to compare two tables in numbers and find the differences. MACMOST is brought to you thanks to a great group of more than 1,000 supporters. Go to MACMOST.com/Patreon. There you could read more about the Patreon campaign, join us, and get exclusive content and course discounts. So a common task that you may need to do with spreadsheets is to compare old data and new data. So say you have two tables with names in them and you want to figure out which names are only in one table and not the other. So here I've got two such tables. Now these are two tables in the same sheet, but they could be in separate sheets as long as they're in the same document. So you can have formulas that work on both tables at the same time. Now the simplest way to do this is to add a column to each table and use Countif to figure out if that name is in the other table. So let's add another column here. And then I'm going to add a formula here, and this is going to be Countif, and the first part of Countif is the test array. So the list of names we're looking in. So it'll be this. And the second part after the comma is the name it's looking for. That. So this will give us a 1 if it can find one name that matches this one. And it will give us a 0 if not. I'm going to copy that. Double click here on the column heading. So I select all of the cells except the header and paste. And now I could see I have all ones skip 2 zeros. These two names are missing from this. I could do the same thing with this table, adding the same formula here. So Countif, and then we're going to look this time in this list of names for this name. Then I'm going to copy it and paste it throughout. And I can see there are two here that are in this table but not in this one. Now my next step might be to make this a little nicer than zeros and ones. So I can go in here and I could say if, and then use this Countif as the condition. So if it's 1 it's true. Then nothing. So just two double quotes to have nothing there. Otherwise I could say not in table 2. Like that. And if I copy and paste that you could see those two cells there have not in table 2, and I can expand it a bit. And it's a really clear indicator of which ones are here but they're missing in this table. And I could do the same thing here. So surround this with if and then a blank or not in table 1. Like that. And then I could copy and paste throughout. Make this column wider. And it's pretty clear what's going on. But what if we don't want to add another column, a comparison column to each one of these? Well, we don't have to. I'm going to delete these columns and use another table instead. So I'll move these next to each other and I'm going to add a table that just has a header row but no header columns like that. And I'm just going to have two cells there. And this will be the comparison table here. And we're going to do the same formula but do it here. So I'm going to do if, and then I'm going to do count if this list of names doesn't have this in it, then blank. Otherwise we could say something like this name and then ampersand is not in table 2. And now let's expand this to have the same number of rows as the longest table. So if one of these was a little longer than the other, we'd have that number of rows. Now I can copy and paste throughout here. And you can see what it does here. Now instead of actually having that text in there, let's remove that. Just have the name. So I'll copy and paste that throughout. And then I can just call this in 1, not 2. And then I can do this one in 2, not 1. And we could do the same thing here. If, and then count if. And then this time we're going to do this list, this name, and then blank or the name that we're looking at. And I'll copy here and paste there. Now it gives us basically the same information and it lines up so we can easily figure out where things are. But we can use this to put some conditional highlighting here. because notice the name is there and it's in the same position. Row 4 and row 4. This one here is in row 10 and in row 10. It's always going to match the same row. So if we wanted to do conditional highlighting we could. So let's select this cell here since it's going to be one that matches. And I'm going to do conditional highlighting, add a rule. I'm going to do text is, and instead of typing something here I'm going to click this button to refer to this cell. And of course these do match. So since they match we'll have it change to red text. And we could see that this changes to red text indicate that it's missing from the other table. Now all we need to do is use that rule throughout. So I'll click Done here. I'm going to select all of the cells here by double clicking A. And I'm going to go to Show Highlighting Rules and then Combine Rules. And then Done. And you can see this one now is red as well. So for each one of these it actually moves the value here to be the one that's directly across from it. So now we can do the same for this table. Here I'll select this first one. I'll do conditional highlighting, add a rule, text is, and then I'm going to click here, select this cell, and then change it to be red text, done. Now if I select all the cells here, show highlighting rules, and combine the rules, you could see it highlights those. This table here I don't actually need to look at. It will update just fine. So if I were to actually change something here so it didn't match anymore, you can see how now both of these are highlighted because each one is missing from the other list. So I could just move this aside or maybe move it to another sheet where it's out of the way. So you can see here I've got ages as well as names. What if I wanted to make a comparison between multiple values? Well, you can do that using Countifs. That's ifs with an S. So we have Countif here. Let's start over again. But this time let's use Countifs. And this time it's test values, condition, test values, condition, etc. as many as we want. So I can do if as before and then Countifs and then let's do test values. So let's do the names and compare it to the name. And let's do the ages and compare it to the age right here. Now it's going to have to match both of those. And then if it matches, nothing. If it doesn't match, then we're going to use the name as before, like that. So now we can select and paste it in here. And now we can see that Samara Phelps doesn't match anymore because the ages are different here. Let's go and do the same thing for this one. If Countifs, and this time we're looking to compare those names with this name and those ages with this age, and then blank, and then the name. Like that. I can copy and paste throughout. And you can see my conditional highlighting still holds. It's still doing the same thing here. But now thanks to the Countifs it's actually comparing multiple things. One thing to note is that if you change these tables so you get new data, you're going to have to update this table here. It's pretty easy to do. You just need to remember to do it. So for instance, let's add a new row here and let's add a name and an age. And you can see it doesn't correctly figure out that this one is missing from that. I need to repopulate this. So the first thing is to make sure I've got enough rows here. So I need 20 because this one now is 20. It's the largest one. Then I need to select those two cells there, copy and paste throughout. And now you can see it matches perfectly. It gives me an error message here because there is no 20th row there. But that's fine. That doesn't get in the way of things. And now we just need to update the conditional highlighting again. So one way to do that is, assuming that nothing changed in the first row, just select all of these, show highlighting rules, and remove it. Same thing for this, show highlighting rules, remove it. And then go back again, this time select the first row as well as all the rest, and then show highlighting rules, combine. And the same thing here, show highlighting rules and combine. And now with those reapplied, the rows will then match across and the highlighting will be in effect again. So that's one method of comparing two tables in Mac Numbers. Hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, click the thumbs up button below to let me know. I publish new tutorials each weekday. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out.